Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Mermail Atlantean deck profile. So I'm really excited for this one because this deck is actually a fantastic water deck and probably my favorite water deck out of them all, because this deck can be used as a toolbox deck to throw just about any good water card into, and it works in this deck, which is really awesome. I love playing around with Mermail Atlantean, and there's so many different combos, and this deck has really stood the test of time to be still the best, well maybe not the best, but one of the best water decks in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can come part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards like getting your name description in a single video, getting a signed card to the mail, and even getting to rest a deck profile every single month to your patron along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to start out with the Mermails. We're going to open up with 3 copies of Abystius. Abystius is a fantastic Mermail card in this deck because what this card does basically is you can discard one other water monster to the graveyard to be able to special summon this card from your hand to your field, which is a really good effect just to be able to get your Abystius to your side of the field. When this card is special summoned as well, you get to add 1 level 4 or lower Mermail monster from your deck to your hand, which is also a really good effect because you have a couple of cards in the deck that are really good to get to your hand quickly. We then play 2 copies of Mermail Abyss Megalo. Megalo is really good too because you can discard 2 water monsters to the graveyard to be able to special summon this card from your hand. Now that does seem like a little bit of a steep cost, and if you guys are unfamiliar with what Mermails kind of do, a lot of your cards actually go off when they're discarded to the graveyard for the effect of a water monster's effect. So usually it's not that big of a deal to pay the cost for the 2 monsters discarded because you're going to plus off of it anyways. And when you do, you get to add 1 Abyss spell or trap from your deck to your hand, and you contribute 1 other face-up attack position water monster, and this card can make a second attack during each battle phase, giving you basically a double attacking 2400 attack point monster, which is pretty good. We then play a single copy of Abyss Spike. Abyss Spike is also a pretty good card in this deck because when this card is normal or special summon, you get to discard a water monster to the grave to add a level 3 water monster from your deck to your hand, which can be a lot of different cards in this deck, but usually it's going to be your copy of Mermail Abyss Gun. There are a couple of other cards in the deck that are level 3 water monsters that you can grab, but usually I'm find myself grabbing Abyss Gun the majority of the time anyways. But if this card is discarded to the graveyard, you can target a Mermail monster in the grave, except another copy of itself, and instantly special summon that target to your side of the field, which is a pretty good effect just to be able to give you additional monsters. So for the Atlanteans, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Atlantean Dragoons. Dragoons, not Red Eyes Dark Dragoons, but Atlantean Dragoons. Okay, so what this card does is all face-up level 3 or lower Sea Serpent type monsters can attack your opponent directly, and when this card is sent to the graveyard, you can activate water monster effects for the effect of a water monster. You can add 1 Sea Serpent monster from your deck to your hand, which is a pretty good effect because all of these monsters just discard your copy of Abystius and your copy of your Megalo. You can just discard cards to the graveyard like this and then be able to activate certain effects, like adding cards from deck to hand. We then play a single copy of Atlantean Marksman. The only really important effect of this card is that if it's discarded to the graveyard to activate a water monster's effect, you're going to get to pop a set card on the field, which is a pretty good effect just to be able to do that. We then play 2 copies of Atlantean Heavy Infantry. Heavy Infantry gives you an additional normal summon, which is a really good effect just to be able to give you an additional normal summon of a level 4 or lower Sea Serpent type monster in addition to your normal summoner set, which can be something like a Neptibus or a copy of your Deep Sea Diva, which is the majority of the ones that I'm going to be normal summoning out with this effect anyways. It also has the ability that if this card is sent to the graveyard to activate a water monster's effect, you can target a face-up card your opponent controls and instantly destroy it, which is also a very nice effect. We then play 3 copies of Neptibus, the Atlantean Prince. Neptibus is a really good card that you can send an Atlantean monster from your deck to the graveyard. This is the card you want to see every single opening hand. This and Abystius are the ones that you want to see. So what this card does is you can send 1 Atlantean monster from your deck to the graveyard, except another copy of itself, to add an Atlantean card from your deck to your hand. This can essentially become a +2 because you can send to your graveyard your copy of Atlantean Dragoons and then add another Sea Serpent from your deck to your hand, and the Dragoons will let you search as well. So you're essentially getting a +2 off the normal summon, which is great. And if this card is sent to the graveyard to activate a water monster's effect, you can target an Atlantean monster in your graveyard and special summon it, which is a ridiculous effect just to be able to add on this card. This card, there's literally no downside to this card. It is probably the best card in the entire deck. We then play 3 copies of one of the Deep Sea cards. This card is really good too because what it does is you can discard this card and a water monster to look at your opponent's hand and then banish a card from their hand face up until the end phase of the next turn, or the end phase of this turn. which is a good effect. Just to be able to get some knowledge on your opponent's hand is really good, and taking a card out of their hand is also really nice. And if this card is special summon, you can send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. Then you get to target a level 4 or lower water monster in your graveyard and place it on top of the deck, which is a pretty good effect just to be able to mill stuff that you don't need and put cards that you want on top of the deck to be able to go off for additional plays. We then play for the last Deep Sea card. We're going to be playing 3 copies of Deep Sea Diva, because when it's normal summon, you can special summon 1 level 3 or lower Sea Serpent monster from your deck, which can be your Neptibus, which is a pretty good bargain, I have to say. So that's it for the Atlantean, Deep Sea, and Mermail cards. Let's get into the rest of the cards in the deck. So for the other cards we're playing in the deck, we're playing a Frog Engine. So we're going to be playing 3 copies of Swap Frog. I really quickly will mention, you guys, is this just me, or does this guy like stare into your soul? Like, he just feels like he's staring into my soul the whole time. Like, I love the mat, it's new and all, but he does feel like he's staring into my soul. But you basically play 3 copies of Swap Frog. You can special summon this card from your hand by discarding 1 other water monster. And when this card is summoned, you can send 1 level 2 or lower water monster from your deck or face from your field to the graveyard, and then once per turn, you can return 1 monster you control to the hand, and you can normal summon 1 additional frog monster to your side of the field, except for Swap Frog, which is a pretty good effect just to be able to get you another monster on your side of the field, and it's just an overall really good 3-of in this deck. We then play a single copy of Dupe Frog. Dupe Frog is also a really powerful card in the deck because you can banish it from the graveyard for your Ronin Totems effect, and it's usually the card that I'm going to send to the graveyard off my copy of Swap Frog to be able to get additional plays. We then play a single copy of Ronin Totem. Ronin Totem can banish another frog monster from your graveyard to special summon itself back to your side of the field, which is a really good effect just to get you additional plays. We then play for the other monsters of the deck that are additional water monsters. We have quite a few additional water monsters for the toolbox of the deck, which is a single copy of Moral and Glacia. Moral and Glacia is really good in this deck because Moral and Glacia cannot be normal summoned or set. It must be special summoned by having exactly 5 water monsters in the graveyard, which is pretty easy to do in this deck to be able to put the exact amount of water monsters that you need. And if you do that and you special summon it to your side of the field, you can discard 2 random cards from your opponent's hand, which is an extremely powerful effect in this deck. Just to be able to hit your opponent for 2 cards in their hand is just really, really, really good. You do skip your next battle phase if this card is sent to the graveyard or leaves the field, which is not the greatest thing, but you can give up your battle phase for ripping 2 cards out of your opponent's hand if it does leave the field. We then play a single copy of Lapis Dragon. Lapis Dragon's pretty good because if this card is added from your deck to your hand, you can reveal it and then immediately special summon it, which is the main effect that you're going to be looking for on this card. It is a level 5 tuner, so it does come in handy sometimes for synchro plays as well. I play a single copy of Aqua Spirit. Aqua Spirit can banish a card from the graveyard that's a water monster to instantly special summon it to your side of the field. 1 copy of Fishborg Launcher. It can special summon itself to your side of the field, which is really good. That if you have a monster, or if you have a monster in the graveyard other than Fishborg Launcher, then all monsters and all of them are water. You can special summon this card from the graveyard, and if you do, banish it when it leaves the field. And this card cannot be used as a synchro material for the synchro summon of a monster, except for water, which is fine because the majority of the stuff we're playing in the extra deck is water anyways. We then play 2 copies of Gamma Seal because Gamma Seal is pretty good at outing boards, especially stuff like Dragoons. And this card is really good at just dealing with problems that you don't want to have to deal with. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the very few spells that we actually play in this deck, because we don't play very many at all. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Monster Reborn because it gets the card back that you need when you need it. A single copy of 1-for-1 to get for the Neptibus, because Neptibus is extremely important in this deck. 1 copy of Abyss Scale of Mikazuchi. Mikazuchi is searchable off of Megalo because this card is really good. What it basically does is you can make it so that monster gains 800 attack, and when a spell is activated that was activated on your opponent's side of the field resolves, you can negate the effect and then send this card to the graveyard. So it's basically a walking spell negation, and your Megalo does turn into a spell negation with this card because it searches it on summon, and then you can equip it to a Megalo to go all the way up to 3200, and it can attack twice as well. I then play a single copy of Pot of Avarice. Pot of Avarice is a card that I could arguably bump up to 2, and I used to play it 2 in this deck, but I felt like I was drawing it too much, so I bumped it back down to 1. But basically what it does is you put 5 monsters back into the deck, and then you shuffle the deck, and then you draw 2, which is a really good effect, but I wanted the Gamma Seals in the deck at 2 instead of 1, so I dropped one of the Pot of Avarices for a Gamma Seal, to be honest. We then play 3 copies of Deep Sea Array. Deep Sea Array is pretty good. You can drop one of these for another Pot of Avarice if you want to, but I like 3, because you banish any water monster from the graveyard, which can help you with your Moral and Glacia control to get the exact amount amount of water monsters you need. But if you're not worried about that, basically what it does is you banish one water monster from the grave to add a level 4 or lower sea serpent monster from your deck to your hand, which basically gets me my Neptibus for free. Because I'm just activating this and banishing any water monster in the graveyard, which essentially gets me a +2. So this card 1-for-1s me what exactly I need. So this card is fantastic in the deck. So that's it for the deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're playing a single copy of the Mermail Link monster. This card is decent. Basically what it does is it takes 2 fish, sea serpent, or aqua monsters to XZ summon this. Basically a water monster, one of the cards in the deck. And then when it's on your field, you can activate the effects of monsters this card points to gain 500 attack and defense. It also has the ability that during your opponent's turn, quick effect, you can send a card from your hand to the graveyard to add a Mermail monster from your deck to your hand. I really wish it said during either player's turn, it just searched, which would be really great. But unfortunately it doesn't. It also has the ability that if this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's attack or by card effect, you can send a water monster from your deck to the graveyard and then target a water monster in the graveyard and special summon it defense, which is a pretty good effect because it goes off with a lot of your different card effects and it's just an overall pretty good card, but it does have to be destroyed by an opponent's card or effect, which is not the greatest because you have to wait on your opponent to do something, and it also, during your opponent's turn, quick effect, you send that card to the graveyard to add a Mermail because it adds on your opponent's turn. It's also, again, not that great because it doesn't on your opponent's turn, but you still need it as a 1-up for the combo piece. We then play a single copy of Marincess Coral Anemone. It basically gives you an additional play, which is really good. It's a great extender in the deck. I just played as a 1-up in the deck because it takes 2 water monsters, and you can target a water monster with 15 or less attack in your graveyard and special summon it, which is pretty good just to get you an additional monster on the field. I really like that ability, but you have to special summon to a zone this card points to. You can't special summon anything but water for the rest of the turn, which is not that big of a deal because you pretty much just play water in the extra deck anyways. We then play a single copy of Needle Fiber. Needle Fiber is extremely important in the deck because it gives you additional plays in the deck, and it's an overall really good card. We play a single copy of Bujinki Amaterasu, or the Bujinki Link monster. This card's pretty good because it can help you get into XZ's plays, which is a really nice thing. Unicorn because it spins stuff, and Appaloosa because it's easy to put a bunch of monsters on the field very quickly. We play a single copy of the Mermail Abyss Gaios. Gaios is a 1-of to me. I've always thought Gaios was a 1-of. I've never played this card at any more than one, and I summon it exactly when I need it, and I don't when I don't. I mean, it goes off when I need it. And while this card's face up has XZ material, level 5 or higher monsters can attack. And then once per turn during either player's turn, you can detach a material from this card to negate the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls and have their attacks, or that have less attack than this card until the end of the turn, which is a pretty good effect just to be able to give you an instant negation. And also, it's a pretty big beef stick too. We then play a single copy of Abyss Dweller. Abyss Dweller is basically here to negate graveyard effects, and also makes your monsters go up by 500. Bahamut Shark to help you summon, well, Toad. We play Double Toad as well. The Double Toad is really nice because Double Toad is just really easy to establish, especially with Swap Frog and Bahamut Shark. It's just really, really easy. If you don't establish a Toad during the first turn, you might have done something wrong, or you bricked. We then play a single copy of Trishula because Trishula is really easy to go into with your Fish Bog launcher. And then we play a single copy of Dragite because Dragite is also a really easy card to go into in this deck because Dragite gives you additional spell and trap negations, which is really good. We play a single copy of White Aura Whale because it can blow a board on summon, which is nice. And then for my copy of my Crystron Needle Fiber target, I play a single copy of Desert Locust. Desert Locust is really neat because if this card is Synchro Summon, which this counts as a Synchro Summon, then you can, the turn player discards a card, which is really nice because if you use its effect during your opponent's turn to be able to tribute it, to be able to special summon a Synchro Tuner from the extra deck, then you make your opponent discard a card. And if you've already ripped 2 by Moreland Glacia, and then you've also ripped a card by the Deep Sea card as well, you've ripped 3 out of their hand, and then this becomes the 4th rip out of their hand, they're probably not going to have a good time on their turn. And then you establish Toad as well, they're really not going to have a good time because they essentially have 1 card left. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed this deck. It's a really cool deck. It's been a while since I've actually updated this deck, and it's a really fun deck to play with. I absolutely love Mermails. There's no, like, indefinite way to play this deck. I like this build, but you could easily change up the build and change it to make it your own, which is what's really nice about Mermail. That's the thing that I've always understood about this deck, is that basically you can change it really easily and customize it. Like, you don't have to play the Frog engine. You don't have to play all of the Deep Sea arrays. You can change it up and play a Nimble engine in this deck, and it still works, which is what's really cool. As long as you're playing water, you're probably doing it right with this deck, which is what's really nice. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell near so you can come part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.